OpenAI targets AGI with a system that thinks like a pro engineer. This is out of theinformation.com. So we're seeing more and more tech companies kind of saying that they're slowly going to be replacing engineers, software developers. Mark Zuckerberg said on the interview with Joe Rogan that they're probably going to have AI that sort of like replaces the need for mid-level software engineers. And he's talking about that happening this year. It seems like OpenAI is preparing to test an early version of its new AI coding assistant. So according to this article, there's a number of people that spoke to some of the OpenAI leaders about this particular product. OpenAI is working on building an AI tool to help senior software engineers handle more complex programming tasks. And it's seen as sort of a key step towards AGI, artificial general intelligence. And this isn't some faraway dream. This is something that they're specifically talking about, a specific product that could potentially be released this year. This effort is part of CEO Sam Altman's goal to automate software engineering and release a powerful new product that handles coding problems involving multiple steps, aiming to replicate the work of an experienced programmer. This is according to a person who heard him, Sam Altman, speak about the project. And certainly this advanced coding agent combined with AI that can solve math problems, run experiments, etc., could one day automate the work of AI researchers. This is, of course, kind of like the scary and exciting moment where we believe that we may see some sort of an intelligence explosion. If you have these AI tools capable of running AI research, of improving AI kind of recursively by themselves, autonomously, certainly you can see how that kind of changes everything. We don't have to have AI automate everything. If we're able to get AI to automate its own improvement, that's kind of the one domino that's going to knock over everything else. And this AI agent could boost an internal tool OpenAI has already developed to help its AI researchers work faster, including by generating code for their experiments related to AI models, according to an employee. And this product is already popular internally within OpenAI. And as Sam Altman said, this sort of coding agent can lead to the type of superintelligent tools. It could massively accelerate scientific discovery and innovation well beyond what we are capable of doing on our own. As we talked about here before, that's kind of like the big target. That one thing is probably a bigger accomplishment, a more important accomplishment than any other single thing. So automating coding, automating, customer service, automating running a business, automating robots to do manual labor, all that is very, very cool. It's very awesome, very useful, but automating the sort of AI research, the improvement of AI and what it's capable of, right? That's this sort of thing here that creates this sort of a steep increase in sort of the performance of AI, its capabilities. This is why the jump from sort of AGI to superintelligence might happen much faster than we sort of anticipate. By the way, this week, we believe OpenAI is going to release Operator. That's the thing that takes control over your computer and does things for you, right? Orders things, sets up events, deliveries, shopping and travel, etc. We've already seen the same thing with Anthropic, computer use, their version of it. We've seen Project Mariner by Google, and a lot of third-party apps kind of trying this. And this week, apparently, OpenAI will sort of throw their hat in the ring with their own sort of agent for computer use called Operator. In a recent interview, Wall Street Journal talks to OpenAI's product chief on the Stargate project, various new AI models, and agents. Interestingly, they mention why they went from O1 to O3. Why was that naming convention used? It's actually not as sort of surprising and secretive as I thought. There's a company called Telefonica who has a network called O2. So O2 was out. So they just jumped to O3. He briefly talks about the shrinking sort of development cycles. It would be 18 months between development of the different models. They went from O1 to O3 in 3 months. So that iteration cycle is compressing. And guess what? They're already training the model that comes after O3. And this is where they get into the coding. He briefly alludes to the operator, right? The thing that's going to be released this week, allegedly. And next, he talks about, like we talked about the O1. They skipped O2 just because it was a trademark or whatever. Some other company was using it. But it sounds like it might continue, O3, O4, or O5, etc. And O4, the next model, is already being trained. As we've already talked about a few videos ago, if you saw that whole OpenAI broke out video, it's very likely that each model teaches the next model. It's this recursive sort of self-improvement. Each one generates the reasoning, the thoughts that then is used as synthetic data to train the next generation of models, and so forth and so on. So again, he doesn't quite say that. We were assuming that, but it's kind of been an open secret for a while now. This is what we've been suspecting. He kind of alludes to it, and then he goes into coding. So keep that in mind. Each model is a recursive self-improvement of the previous model. Each time it gets better, it's better able to produce the next model that's even better than it. Keep that in mind as he continues talking about coding. So recursive self-improvement, coding, and the operator that's getting released this week. Keep that in mind as he explains where this is going.
We had a research breakthrough that we announced, and we put that in a model called O1. So it's actually a totally different naming scheme. And in part, that's because the model can do something that GPT-4 can't do. It can reason. So, GPT-4 is amazing. It knows a lot of stuff. You can ask it a question, you get a quick answer. It's kind of like System 1 thinking. The O series of models, O1 and its successors, actually reason. So, think if I ask you a hard question, if I ask you to do a crossword puzzle, you don't just start giving out the answers, right? You're going to look at it and you're like, okay, that first one, I think I have a few ideas for what that could be. But I don't exactly know. Okay, now I know that there's an A in the third letter. Well, then it must be this. You're building hypotheses, testing those hypotheses. Sometimes you refute them. Sometimes you can, confirm them. And then you build on top of that, and off you go. And that's how you solve any hard problem. It's also how you solve, booking a flight. It's how scientific research gets done. And so these models, for the first time, can do that. And they also, at the same time, it's not just their ability to reason, they also are much smarter than GPT-4. By any reasoning benchmark, they're just off the charts. And so we announced that, and then O3 is sort of the next version. We're skipping a number because of our friends at Telefonica who have a network called O2.
See, I was thinking about that. I was like, it's probably because it's just such a massive leap.
Yeah. That's what we should say.
That's what you should say.
That's what we should say.
But now we're really gotten to the bottom of it.
See, you're helping me out again.
I'm here for you.
So anyways, O3, so the other thing that's really interesting that's happening is, and that also gives us this optimism, is it took us, I think, 18 months to go from GPT-3 to GPT-4. And, that's relatively fast. You probably don't remember how, if we went back to GPT-3 today, after you're used to GPT-4, you'd be like, ugh. I mean, at the time it was mind-blowing, and we whooshed past the Turing test, and everyone, I remember I was like, I can't believe I live in this world where these things exist. But now you'd go back to GPT-3 and it would be like, I'm not going to use that. So that took 18 months. We have gone from O1 to O3 in about 3 months. So the iteration cycle is compressing. And we're already training the model that comes after O3. It looks like we're going to see another big jump in capabilities. So the reason we're super excited about this is the models are getting really smart really quickly. I'll say one last thing.
And then you're going to tell me when
and then, of course, I'll give you the hour that we're going to launch.
Okay, great.
So when we launched the preview of O1, one of the ways that we benchmark these models, especially in coding, is by having them effectively enter competitive coding contests. And it's a good benchmark because you can kind of do these things asynchronously, so you can enter them as if they were a human and they get scored in the same way that any human would. And the first version of these models was like the millionth best coder or something like that, which, it's not bad. You're still top 2 or 3% in the world. But the second version, when we actually announced, or when we launched the sort of full first version of this new model, O1, it was like the 1,000th best engineer in the world, a software engineer at these competitive coding problems. O3 will be the 175th best engineer in the world. And that's, again, we're talking 3, 4, 5 months between these things. You've gone from a millionth to 175th. And, so you can imagine where it goes in the future as we continue to see meaningful steps up. So that's why we're so excited about these models. We launch 2 versions of these things. There's sort of a mini version that retains a lot of its core competencies around things like math and software engineering, but doesn't keep all of its world knowledge. but it's very fast and very cheap to inference as well. And then we have the sort of full model that is, that kind of brings it all together. So we'll launch the O3 mini version very soon, and we'll follow up with O3. I would expect, we said sort of February, March if everything goes right. So that's what we're shooting for.
Now, in the midst of all of this, and this is just sort of anecdotal evidence, this is what I'm seeing personally, but in the past, when I was testing the various models that were coming out for their coding abilities, the test that I would do would be pretty simple. It would be like, how much could they do with just one output? One of the Claude releases, 3.5, I believe it was, that was where there was sort of this big jump where it got like a lot better. You were able to give it multiple things, like to iterate on its development cycle, to add things. It'll be really, really good at doing that. With the R1 model, the Chinese open source DeepSeek R1 model, we have to step up our tests once more to make them a little bit more complicated to really kind of get an idea for how good these models are. And obviously, I'm not doing some high-end, complicated software engineering of this stuff. It's just simple, fairly simple tests. But I am seeing kind of this rapid iterative improvements in its ability to code, not only just as like a one-shot prediction, but also to come back and iterate on that code, to add comments so that code could be, more easily understood, and add various optimizations and improvements, etc. So here, for example, is where the R1 model builds a snake game and also creates, an AI control for that game. So the game kind of plays itself. It builds the game and it makes it play itself. So the O3 model is coming soon. And we're going to take a look at how well it performs at the various coding tasks, how much more better is it versus the O1. And later this year, we're going to see that programming app that OpenAI is releasing, the AI that's going to help you create software. But it's important to note that the kind of projections that OpenAI has for, its various tools, but probably a lot of it's going to come from this particular coding tool that we talked about. That's where there's a lot of demand because there's a lot of cost associated with paying people to do software development. So just notice this thing right here. OpenAI wants ChatGPT, and more broadly, like all the things sort of underneath their platform, the ChatGPTs and the AI coding tools, OpenAI wants it to have 1 billion daily active users by the end of 2025. ChatGPT was, of course, the fastest growing app of all time, getting to 100 million in some record amount of time, in days. Now, I believe last time they mentioned it, they're sitting somewhere at 300 million users. And their goal this year, notice, is, first of all, 1 billion, and that's daily active users by the end of 2025. Now, certainly that's just a projection. We don't know if they're going to hit that or not. But if you think about what kind of an impact would having your own kind of pocket software engineer, what kind of an impact that would have, certainly that kind of big surge in how many daily active users they have, it would make sense. Now, whether that's going to be under the kind of the ChatGPT umbrella, I don't think so, because I think the chief financial officer, or one of the kind of the OpenAI leadership people, they were saying how they're trying to figure out how to best price it for enterprise use, right? So in other words, if you have a person and you're paying $100,000 a year and they either sort of like get replaced with some sort of an AI tool, or let's say they get twice as productive, like how does OpenAI, how do they charge sort of the appropriate amount of money for that? And certainly if OpenAI releases something like that and charges a lot of money for it, it's almost like that's good, because I think the other possibilities, like imagine if this tool, for example, China, just like they released the R1 model, the equivalent to the O1, they released it open source to now where everybody's using it and able to do whatever they want with it. What if after OpenAI releases this tool capable of doing, software development, what happens if within the next 6 to 12 months after that, an open source version of that drops? That would kind of be the nightmare scenario, because if you go from needing a large number of software engineers to having a free open source kind of a thing that's able to do that, that impact might be pretty massive and pretty fast. At least if this is initially only available to enterprise at high prices, it would sort of slow down how quickly this kind of goes through the entire industry. So again, at this point, I think most of the tech CEO leadership have said that they're very optimistic about AI replacing or strongly sort of augmenting how well software engineers can do their job, which would obviously probably mean that there's less jobs to go around. Unless, you can think of a sort of a software coding, the demand for the amount of code that we need is just infinite, which there might be a very high demand sort of at the top level, but maybe sort of at the mid level, not as much. Again, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. I have no idea. I can't see the future. I am just trying to kind of reason based on sort of the data that's coming out. We are kind of in uncharted waters here. There's a lot of people with very strong opinions. Some people are convinced that, that's it. Sort of this is the end of coding and software engineers. There are some people on X, for example, notoriously, that are saying that there's no way this is going to affect software engineering, that there's not going to be any replacement, that AI will not be anytime soon able to replace engineers. At the same time, a lot of these tech companies, including places like Salesforce, are saying that there is going to be a large effect that the AI has, and they're betting big money on it. So who's right, who's wrong? Certainly, I feel like this year, 2025, will be where we're going to kind of get a better idea of what's going to happen. Again, this is from Sam Altman's blog post called Reflections. He's saying, we are now confident we know how to build AGI as we traditionally understood it. And we believe that in 2025, this year, we may see the first AI agents join the workforce and materially change the output of companies. In the last few videos that we did about this, a lot of people in the comments have asked me, I've heard this a number of times, people saying, I am, halfway through getting my computer science degree. I'm almost done with getting my computer science degree. Or perhaps they're just starting and they want to know, what does that mean? Should they continue? Should they, stop? Should they pick a different major? First and foremost, I'll say this. I have no idea. Don't take my advice. This advice should not be followed by anyone, please. But with that said, here's kind of how I'm thinking about it, based on everything that I'm seeing. And again, just my opinion. Imagine you're standing on a beach and you see this massive tsunami wave coming from the horizon right towards you. Switching majors or changing career paths could be kind of like saying, should I move, 6 feet to the right or maybe 6 feet to the left, perhaps? The answer is it's probably not going to matter. AI automation, everyone will feel it to one extent or another. So we're all going to have to deal with it collectively, globally. That's the good thing. It's not like it's going to wipe out one job and nothing else. If you're in tech, you have tech skills, you're in computer science, you're practicing doing stuff with computers, doing software engineering, etc. This is a good place to be right now. It's certainly not worse than being in, customer service or office administration or some of these legal professions that are already getting impacted by AI. In our tsunami example, it's like at least you have a surfboard. You might just surf your way out of there. I apologize if this is a horrible analogy, but I guess what I'm saying is that if you're looking simply for that salary, that wage, AI is going to somehow impact all wages, all salaries, and we still don't know exactly how quickly it's going to happen. We don't know exactly what the solutions will be. That's kind of still to be figured out. AI will impact jobs, but I wouldn't change anything right this second necessarily. If you're on a certain path, I wouldn't try to quickly shift just because AI is coming. So that's kind of from a career/job perspective. But if we're looking at it from more an entrepreneurial perspective, right? If you're thinking about it more like this is an opportunity to build something, build a business, build some sort of a product, do something to make money, not necessarily go work for a large company and collect a paycheck, but rather like how do you take advantage of this coming thing to maybe make a buck or two? In that case, I think, knowing how to code, being a tech is kind of the place where you want to be. Just start making sure that you know how to do all the AI stuff as well. Understand how AI tools work, how to use the various APIs, which ones work well, which ones don't, how do you do local, open source, whatever stuff that's coming out. The R1 model is incredibly sophisticated and good, even running on local hardware. So I guess my point is, number one, take a deep breath. This is coming. Number two, don't panic. Don't try to do something quickly. Every few months that pass, you get a clear idea of how everything's shaping up. And number three, don't stop learning. I think knowing how to learn and continue learning will be the killer skill of the next decade. The people that can sort of acquire and apply knowledge faster will be incredibly successful, I feel like. Imagine having a world-class, software engineer on your computer, being able to do whatever idea you have. Imagine having a world-class expert in any field you can imagine giving you advice. That's what AI will likely unlock for us. And there's going to be a lot of people that do incredibly well with it. I also believe that a lot of the progress and innovation, productivity improvements will help everyone live better lives. So I think I'll stop it there. As I've said quite a lot in this channel, I feel like, I do believe that the long-term outcomes of AI automation, it's going to be abundance. It's going to be more stuff for everybody, less cost of living, not as many people needing to work. They can still work. There's just more and more people will likely not need to survive, to get whatever financial goods, whatever goods and services that they want. So if everything works out well, then the long term is very optimistic. The short to medium term, well, we don't know. That's kind of what this whole thing is about. What happens if this job displacement is widespread and rapid? Do we have some plan for that? Probably not. Hopefully it's widespread, but kind of slow rolling, so we have enough time to kind of evolve and adapt. But just keep that in mind that maybe, protecting the jobs at all costs, that sounds like a great idea short term, but long term is really the point of your life to have a job. I think the most important question of the next 10, 20 years is going to be, can AI and robots and automation, can it drive abundance for everybody? And not by giving everybody more money, but rather by taking the price of everything and just lowering it year by year. If human labor is the biggest contributor to the price of stuff, whether it's like healthcare or services or goods, houses, cars, whatever, what happens if while people are getting replaced with AI automation, the cost of everything just collapses? All of a sudden, that sort of equation changes. And if that is realistic, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but if that is a realistic future over the next 10 to 20 years, then the question becomes, okay, how do we make sure we get there? If it's a possibility, then saying, let's make sure we stop AI so everybody gets to keep their job, that's not the right way forward. Again, if and only if AI automation can drive prosperity and abundance. That's kind of the key to figuring out where this whole thing goes. That's at least my opinion, and of course some of the people's that I've presented on here. Let me know what you think. Is it crazy? Does it sound like a fantasy? Are you completely against this? And do you think that tools like this, like this thing that's coming out, do you think it could replace mid-level software engineers? Could it potentially get to the point where it's replacing most, even some of the higher end engineers? Let me know in the comments. If you made this far, thank you so much for watching. My name is Wes Roth, and I'll see you next time.